3 haunted cabin encounters in deep Appalachia revealed, sinister secrets and unexplained horrors. The minivan rattled through the winding roads of the Appalachians, the landscape shifting with every turn. Josh Parker gripped the wheel, his knuckles pale against the dark leather. He could already feel the weight of the city life lifting, but little did they know, they were headed straight into something far darker. The towering trees swayed in the breeze, whispering secrets, and the river ahead gleamed like a silver serpent under the afternoon sun. "This is going to be perfect," Josh smiled, but the forest seemed to smirk back. As they pulled into the driveway of the cabin, a sense of foreboding washed over Emily. The quaint structure seemed innocent enough, cradled among the trees, yet the air felt thick, heavy with something unsaid. "Come on, guys," she urged as her children jumped out, all energy and excitement. With their laughter ringing in the air, she tried to shake off a chill that crept down her spine. After unpacking, darkness settled down like a blanket, and the laughter faded into an eerie silence. The wind howled outside, making the windows rattle. It was then Josh heard it, a faint, distant cry. At first, he dismissed it as an animal or maybe a figment of his imagination. But when shadows began to dance outside their window and that strange chill clawed at their throats, unease clouded the cabin. Emily swore she saw something moving in the trees, a fleeting shadow darting past. Their children, obliviously tired, fell asleep, but Jason and Emily lay awake, strands of fear weaving tighter around their hearts. The following day felt like a promise of adventure. They stumbled upon a dusty old door cleverly hidden behind a bookshelf, as if daring them to uncover its secrets. What lay beyond was a room that whispered of time long past. Old photographs lined the walls, children's faces frozen in joy. But the yellowing headlines on the wall chilled them. More missing children, one after another. Josh could hear Emily's breath quicken beside him, her unease echoing in the silence. "What does this mean?" he thought, a knot tightening in his stomach. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each passing minute, paranoia seeped deeper into their bones. The cheerful facade of the rental agency now felt like a mask hiding something sinister. When Earl, the scruffy neighbor with a knowing smile, lingered at the edge of their property, their instincts screamed danger. He seemed to observe their every move. What was his connection to the cabin? The soft whispers rising from the woods filled the silence, twisting into a haunting plea that froze their hearts. As night descended, they felt trapped not just by the forest but by something far worse, a force tethered to the cabin, alive in the darkness. The air thrummed with unspoken words, shadows closing in on their frail defenses. The reality of their idyllic getaway turned nightmarish as they realized they were not merely guests here, they were unwitting participants in an age-old game, woven into the folklore of the Appalachians. The weight of choices hung in the air like heavy mist, leaving them to ponder. Would they succumb to the call of the shadows, or would they manage to break free before the darkness consumed them? The morning light seeped through the curtains, casting long, eerie shadows across the cabin's interior. The remnants of fear clung to Emily's skin like a wet shroud. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake the kids. The silence was unsettling, the kind of quiet that made her heart race. As she stepped into the small kitchen, the smell of damp wood filled her lungs. Josh was already there, pouring coffee with a distant look in his eyes. "You heard it last night too, right?" he asked, his voice low. Emily nodded, remembering the chilling sounds that had pierced the night, the cries echoing through the trees. "Maybe we should leave," she said, sounding more fearful than she intended. But Josh shook his head, stubborn resolve setting his jaw. "We just got here. Let us figure out what's really going on." The kids stirred awake, oblivious to the darkness that loomed around them. Emily plastered on a brave face, forcing herself to smile and join in their excited chatter. The eerie feeling clawed at her insides, but for their sake, she kept it at bay. After breakfast, the family decided to explore the nearby woods, despite their earlier anxieties. The trees loomed taller than ever, looming like sentinels guarding secrets. As they ventured farther, the vibrant colors of the forest began to darken, shifting into ominous shades of gray. "Mom! Look at this!" one of the kids exclaimed. They had stumbled upon an old swing set, rusty and tangled in vines. Its chains creaked in the gentle wind, an unsettling sound that sent a shiver down Emily's spine. "Isn't this cool?" they said, excitement tinging their voices. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a place for children. "Let us keep moving," she urged, her skin prickling as she glanced over her shoulder, the eyes of the forest seeming to follow them. They arrived at a clearing, marked by an old stone well at its center. The stones were worn, covered in moss, and a thick fog curled around its base like a serpent. "Is it safe?" her son asked, peering too close to the edge as if drawn by an unseen force. Josh stepped forward, examining it. "It's just a well," he muttered, but disbelief colored his voice. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the very ground beneath them had been tainted. Emily crossed her arms, fighting the impulse to flee. "Maybe we should just head back," she suggested, but Josh's curiosity held him captive. "No, let us just look in," he urged, leaning over the edge. The darkness inside seemed to deepen, swallowing the sparse light. Before she could protest, he leaned in closer, peering into the abyss. A whisper, faint yet distinct, drifted up from below, words trailing within the darkness. "Help me!" Josh jerked back, his face pale. Emily's heart dropped. It was the same voice that had haunted their dreams. A million thoughts raced through her mind. "Did you hear that? What was that?" The kids giggled, clearly unperturbed, but the laughter felt hollow to Emily. She felt a growing dread, an instinct urging them to escape. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from the trees behind them. Emily's blood turned cold. All their instincts screamed danger. "Get back to the cabin!" she shouted at the kids, fear gripping her throat. Josh turned to look, but the woods had gone too quiet, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. As they stumbled back, every step further from the well felt like a loss, the darkness behind them pressing in, drawing tighter. But when they reached the cabin, a heavy stillness surrounded them, the kind that precluded the worst. They were not alone. In the back of her mind, Emily considered the names of those missing children, the ones in the photographs, the way they disappeared into the night. Did we really escape the shadows? She thought, her heart racing, the panic creeping back in as the door shut behind them. And just then, a soft knock echoed against the back door. Who could it be? The knock echoed again, this time more urgent, slicing through the silence like a blade. Emily's heart raced with terror. She exchanged a glance with Josh, whose expression mirrored her own dread. "Should I get it?" he asked, his voice barely breaking through the thick air that surrounded them. Emily shook her head violently, her gut told her getting that door would be a mistake. Let us be quiet," she whispered, hoping against hope that whoever it was would lose interest. The kids, sensing the thick tension, huddled close to Emily. She could feel their little hearts beating against her leg. The knock came again, this time followed by a soft voice, barely more than a whisper, calling out from the other side, "Help me please." The voice sent an icy jolt through her body. It was eerily familiar, a call echoing that same cry they'd heard from the well. Panic gripped her throat. It wasn't a stranger. "Mom, who is it?" her youngest asked, eyes wide, fear creeping into his innocent face. "Just a person lost in the woods, we have to stay quiet," she murmured, trying to keep calm, though inside she was screaming with terror. Josh stepped towards the back door, even as Emily's pulse quickened. "I have to see," he said, his voice steady but his eyes betraying uncertainty. "Stop!" she cried out. "We don't know who it is." He hesitated, glancing back as that whisper repeated. "Please help me." A war raged inside Emily. What if it was one of the missing children? Maybe they could save someone. Hope flickered, but dread weighed heavier in her chest. Josh reached for the door. "I'm checking," he said, defiance thick in his tone. Emily felt a wild rush of fear, the need to protect her family rising like a tide. "Josh, no!" she shouted, grasping his arm. The knock came again, insistent and desperate. "We can't leave them," he said softly, but there was a hint of fear that crept into his words. Before Emily could argue further, the voice became more intense, almost shrill. "Please, please. You have to let me in." The children winced, tears forming in their eyes. "I want to go home," the oldest whimpered, trembling. "Neither of us knows what's out there." Emily pressed, her heart racing as heavy footsteps sounded from the trees beyond. "What if it's a trap?" Josh licked his lips, fear flickering across his face. The idea of leaving someone out there was gnawing at him, but the thought of opening that door felt like inviting death itself into their home. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The air became thick and unwelcoming. The whispers murmured low, almost soothing, yet sinister. It was all around them now, rippling through the walls, creeping into her ears. "Get back," she hissed, panic clawing at her throat as she ushered the kids away from the door. Just then, the back door rattled violently. It rattled with an unnatural force. Emily felt the cabin tremble, her heart pounding as she squeezed her children. With every second, her resolve frayed. A loud crash echoed, the door bursting open without warning. Emily screamed, instinctively covering the kids with her body. From the threshold, shadows spilled into the room, dancing like a twisted play. A figure stepped through, cloaked in darkness, its eyes gleamed with a sinister glow. "Help me," it rasped, but this time, the voice was no longer pleading. It was a demand. With every fleeting moment, dread settled like a brick in her gut. The shadows wrapped tighter around them, snaking their way through the darkness of the cabin. As they stood frozen, entrapped by fear, she could almost see the faces' tormented souls reaching out, beckoning from the darkness. "Who are you?" she managed to choke out. The figure leaned closer, its features twisting into something grotesque, and whispered, "You called for me." The room fell silent, the air thickening as Emily's mind raced. Who had called? What had they awakened? And just like that, the shadows shifted again, draping over them like a suffocating blanket. But beyond the fog of terror, another knock sounded at the front door, louder this time, urgent. "Help me please." Emily's heart dropped. The game had only just begun. The air turned frigid, as if a storm had swept through the cabin, with dread curling around Emily's throat. The figure loomed closer, its breath foul and stilted, a mix of rotten earth and despair that clung to her like a malignant shadow. "Emily, you must remember," it hissed, clutching at the air as those glowing eyes pierced into her very soul. "Get away from us!" Josh shouted, pushing Emily behind him, yet he trembled as fear carved a jagged path across his face. The children clung to Emily, their small frames shaking against her legs. "Mommy, I want to go home," her youngest cried, his voice barely a whimper. The darkness oozed around them, thick and suffocating, wrapping itself around each heartbeat. Suddenly, the foreboding knock at the front door echoed once more frantic this time. "Please. Let me in." It felt like a scream from the depths of the earth, clawing at the door, desperate. "What do we do?" Josh's voice cracked. Their minds raced, flashes of memories hurling through Emily's mind, the stories whispered in the dark, and the faces of the children lost to the woods. "Maybe if we ignore it, it will go away," she stammered, but her voice faltered, far from convincing that a laugh, deep and ugly, sent shards of ice into Emily's veins. "You think they will let you be?" No. You must choose. The figure twisted its head, shadows swirling around, coiling like snakes. Emily darted her gaze from Josh to the figure, desperation coursing through her. Choose what? She gasped, her fear transforming into something sharper, a desperate need for answers. Open the door, save one, or hold tight, and lose all. The figure's mouth twisted into a cruel smile. What will it be, Emily? Don't listen to it. Josh shouted, gripping Emily's arm just as the lights flickered ominously. Olds hung near the walls whispered regrets and pleas, weaving words of horror into their minds. Outside, the cries grew louder. Help me. Please, I'm scared. Let me in. The voice broke through, fragile and yet powerful, mingling with the sinister chuckle of the figure before them. Emily's heart raced, weighing the anguish of the unknown against the gut-wrenching urge to protect her family. It's a sick joke, a trick, she muttered, searching Josh's eyes for strength, for hope. What if it's real? He asked, his voice trembling, sweat glistening on his forehead. What if? She shot back, uncertainty heavy in the silence that followed. The children were shaking, drawing closer to their parents, seeking shelter from the onslaught of terror that enveloped them. Another thundering knock rattled the front door, shaking the frame. Help me please, it was insistent, broken but pleading, like sand slipping through fingers. What are we going to do? Whispered the oldest child, tears glistening in their eyes. The walls felt like they were closing in. The figure chuckled darkly, its grin widening, something primal and ravenous behind its gaze. Time is running thin, the darkness hungers. Will you let them in? With every heartbeat, the tension spiraled. Each option spiraled into a deeper abyss. What would it mean to save one soul? And what about the others? Emily turned towards the door again, biting her lip in desperation. We can't open it. We can't. But the decision was being taken from her step by agonizing step. The figure moved closer, shadows swirling like a tempest, and each pained cry from outside began to intertwine with the sinister laughter. She felt the walls pulse, the very structure of the cabin felt alive, breathing, and waiting. Let me in. It hissed. Emily's mind swirled, her thoughts racing. How could she save her family from the grip of this horror? What if the voices were truly what they seemed? And then, through all the chaos, an idea flickered in her mind, a dark, twisted thought that it may just be the only way to gain control. With a split-second decision, she turned toward Josh, her voice barely a whisper. We'll do it. We'll open the door. But the moment was cut short as the growing figure lunged, shadows coiling like snakes. Too late. It roared, engulfing them in an inky blackness. Suddenly, the children screamed, broken and terrified, and the knocking came again, this time, from within the cabin. Let us out. Panic surged as the walls began to thrum, and Emily's scream drowned in the chaos as the world around them twisted. As the shadows tightened and the cabin shuddered, the whispers crescendoed into cacophony. Emily's heart raced, words clawing at her throat, a primal warning. She had made a choice, but what would it lead to? The game was far from over. The shadows writhed like living entities, wrapping around Emily's family, the chill deepening as if winter had seeped into their bones. Raw terror gripped her heart, pulsating with every word spoken by the lurking figure. The echoing screams of her children hit her like blades, twisting her stomach into knots. Let us out. They cried, the panic slicing through the air with every desperate plea. The cabin shook, groaning softly, an entity burdened by secrets, and Emily felt the walls closing in, straining against an unseen force. The dark figure stood with its grotesque smile, eyes glinting like cold daggers. Open the door, it hissed, a metallic rasp that made her skin crawl. The price for your choices is high, but the rewards, oh, they could be so sweet. No! Josh yelled, shaking his head violently, like a man trapped in a nightmare he couldn't wake from. Emily, we can't. We can't let them in. His voice was raw, filled with an urgency that bubbled beneath the surface. Emily's heart thundered. She was already losing the battle against reality. Were those truly her children pleading for release, or were they twisted manifestations of the figure's sick desire to torment them? She couldn't tell anymore. The air thickened, the sense of dread palpable. As the shadows danced closer, she felt each breath come more laborious. The darkness wasn't just around them, it was inside, clawing at her thoughts, caressing her fears, and whispering promises of freedom. "Mommy, please." Her youngest whimpered, and Emily felt her resolve crack as his voice broke through the cloud of despair engulfing her. How could she turn away? She clenched her fists, mind racing. What would it mean to grant access to open that door? The figure seemed to sense her hesitation, its laughter vibrating like a death knell through the cabin. What's one life lost to save the rest? A mere trifling in the grand scheme. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of the children's faces, pale, terrified, their eyes wide pools of fear. This was no simple game. "No one is losing anyone," she shouted, her voice rising fiercely. But the darkness responded with a growl, an ominous rumble that shook her core. The pounding on the door escalated, shifts in tone tugging at her sanity. "Let me in. You can't leave me out here. I promise, I won't hurt you." Torn between the monstrous figure and the voices that pulled at her heart, Emily felt herself teetering, her mind a battleground. "I won't let you take them," she yelled at the figure, each word filled with defiance. "Then you have sealed their fates," it sneered, closing in. "The choice was always yours and now, you choose denial." The room quaked, and suddenly the shadows whipped around her like a cyclone. A terrifying howl enveloped the cabin, drowning out her children's cries. In an instant, the cruel darkness grasped at her limbs, snatching hope and replacing it with sheer terror. Emily staggered, trying to grip onto anything familiar, but all she found was despair. The walls closed in, and in her deepest pit of fear, she saw flashes of the lost children, pale faces trapped forever within the woods, an endless cycle of sorrow and loss. "Come inside if you want to save them, Emily," the figure taunted, its voice merging with the whispers of the cabin, swirling around her until she felt nauseated. "What can you lose?" She was losing herself, and in that moment of dark clarity, she realized choices weren't just about sacrifice, they were about courage. "You're wrong," Emily shouted, defiance boiling inside her. "I refuse to let fear decide my fate." And without warning, she lunged toward the door. It squeaked ominously as emotion surged through her. She had to act, had to take control before it was too late, but as her hand reached the doorknob, the children screamed louder than ever, and the figure's laughter echoed, twisting her resolve into ashes. "What choice will you make, Emily?" it howled, a cacophony of despair rising within her. Everything tensed as she grasped the handle. Was it truly a way out, or an abyss? Time slowed, stretching each heartbeat. Emily took a deep breath as darkness surged around her, threatening to consume everything she loved. Whatever lay behind the door, her final stance was one of defiance. But would it cost her everything? And then the world fell into silence, leaving her with a poignant question hanging in the air. Could she truly save her family from this nightmare, or had she just unlocked the darkest of horrors? The cabin held its breath, a symphony of silence pressing down on Emily. The darkness pulsed, alive with anticipation, as she hovered at the door. Was this moment a lifeline or a plunge into the depths of despair? Clenching her eyes shut, she tried to erase the monstrous laughter echoing in her mind. In an instant, the stillness shattered. An explosion of noise rattled her bones. The screams of her children clawing for freedom intensified, blending with the mocking tones of the shadowy figure. An icy wind howled through the openings of the cabin, chilling her to numbness. Memories of sweet lullabies faded under the weight of terror. "Please, Mommy, please." The anguish in her son's voice shattered her resolve anew. She felt the air around her change, thickening, stuffing her lungs. Every fiber of her being screamed to turn the knob, to step outside and gather her children in her arms. But as her fingers brushed against the cold metal, the image of a sinister smile painted itself in her mind, a flash of the creature's fangs. "Do it," it whispered, its voice smooth as velvet but tainted with malice. "You know you want to save them." Emily shook her head violently, but doubt wove its way into her heart. What if they were already lost? What if the figure outside was the only way to bring them back? The shadow swelled, pulsating with alive tenacity, pressing against her body as if seeking entry, as if hungry for her soul, time-warped, turning seconds into years. The darkness wrapped around her limbs like shackles, dragging her down into memories. She saw fleeting images of laughter, her children playing in sunlit meadows, moments that now felt a lifetime away. Each memory was a thread, slowly unraveling, the shadows threatening to sever them one by one. "Don't let them in." Josh's voice broke through, a tether binding her to reality. "Stay with me, Em. We fight this together." But even as he spoke, the shadows mocked them from every corner. "Together? Together means nothing down here," they hissed. The clash of emotions raged inside her. She felt torn, her love fighting against the consuming dread. She took a step back, shaking her head, trying to dispel the chains of fear that gripped her throat. "Stop it!" she cried out into the abyss. "They're my children. I will not trade their lives for a lie." The laughter answered, rising until it became a cacophony of disdain. The cabin trembled, a living entity racked by its own agony, as if it knew the secrets it kept were about to come to light. Suddenly, the door behind her began to rattle, trembling violently as if something from the other side sought to burst through. Emily spun around in horror, her heart racing against her ribcage. The walls bent inward, creaking ominously, summoning dark thoughts. Had she unwittingly unleashed something? Just then, the shadows momentarily parted, revealing a sliver of light that sliced through the air like a blade. Within it stood a figure, a woman cloaked in white, ethereal and disconcerting. She beckoned, her face familiar yet obscured. "Emily," she whispered, her voice hauntingly melodic. "Help is here, but you must trust me." The air chilled further, freezing Emily in place. Trust? In this tempest of darkness? Who are you? Emily demanded, her voice drowning beneath unease, battling against dread. The woman smiled softly, sadness dancing behind her eyes as if she'd seen the tragedies play out 1,000 times. "Time is fading," she replied, urgency building in her tone. "Your choice matters, but beware, the shadows have eyes, and they want to let you leave without a cost." As the words hung in the air, the laughter intensified, the shadows swirling in viscous waves. Emily felt the floor begin to tremble beneath her feet, a warning, a foreboding threat. Could she trust this new figure? Or was it another trick woven by the shadows to ensnare her deeper into despair? Just as the cabin screamed around her, Emily faced the impossible decision. Would she surrender herself to light, or would she succumb to the haunting whispers of the dark? As the ground shook, the children's pleas echoing against the walls, her heart raced. This was the moment. Would she gamble everything on a flicker of hope, or let fear claim her soul forever? In the split second before she acted, a shadow darted towards her, sharp and menacing, leaving her with a chilling thought that hung there like a dark cloud. What if the light was just another trap, hidden beneath layers of soft deception? And as reality began to spiral, would her choice reclaim her family, or doom them to the darkness permanently? As the darkness writhed around her, Emily felt the weight of eternity pressing down. Heart pounding, she looked into the shining eyes of the woman in white, searching for any sign of comfort, a glimmer of hope in a sea of despair. The shadows danced menacingly, licking at her heels as if eager to pull her back into their depths. "Trust me, Emily," the woman insisted, her voice slicing through the chaos. "I can help you find your children." But how could she trust this ethereal figure? There was something both inviting and sinister in her presence. Emily's hands trembled on the doorknob, muscles coiling tight as she resisted the pull from the shadowy abyss beyond. What help could come from the same space that had imprisoned her family? No. she yelled, clenching her fists at her sides. You want to take me away, don't you? I can't leave them. The laughter ceased for just a moment, a suffocating silence enveloping the cabin before being shattered by the feral screeches of her children once more. The urgency in their cries twisted her insides, heating the cold dread that clung to her skin. Mom! Please help! Mommy! Please! That voice, raw with panic, echoed directly in her heart, pulling her closer to the door, to the peril that lay beyond. Desperation surged through her limbs as she fought to stifle the fear growing within. Could she bear the weight of losing them, or worse, losing herself? Emily! The woman urged again, her tone turning pleading. If you don't act now, they will be lost forever. The cabin quaked beneath her, the darkness shuddering in response, as if it knew Emily was wavering. Shadows surged from the corners like ghostly arms reaching for her, coiling tightly around her ankles, pulling her down, tempting her with promises of power, of saving her children through her own surrender. She felt like a marionette caught in a twisted game of fate. No! Emily pushed back, forcing her weight away from the threshold. I want tea. Tears streamed down her cheeks, catching the swirling starlight cast by the opening. The woman's face flickered like a candle in a storm. Make your choice. Every moment counts. Suddenly, a horrific gasp erupted from the depths of the cabin. Emily's heart leaped into her throat as she spun toward the source of the sound. Joshua, her husband, slumped against the wall, eyes wild and full of terror, pleading for her to come to him. Don't listen to her. He shouted, horror-stricken. It's a trick. She's lying. Do not trust the light. The room spun, both figures pulling at her, a deep divide of light and dark, hope and despair. The walls seemed to close in on her, the cacophony of screams and laughter rising again to fever pitch. In that instant, an electric pulse shot through Emily's veins. She staggered between them, each present stretching her thin against jagged anxieties. What was she willing to lose, and what could she reclaim? Was this woman the key to salvation or another layer of the web spun by the shadows? The temperature in the room dipped further, and she felt tendrils of cold wrap around her wrists, dragging her back toward the darkness. The shadows clamored against her cries, a storm of hisses and whispers urging her to step into their embrace. Time is running out. The woman cried out over the chaos, her voice breaking through an ocean of noise, hauntingly earnest. Make your decision now. With a fierce determination, Emily resolved to fight the darkness, to find her way to the light of truth, not only for her children but for herself. She would not give in, not today, but as she stepped towards the woman in white, a sharp pain seized her chest, as if a claw had sunk deep into her heart. She gasped, stumbling backward, body and mind torn apart by the competing forces. What is the cost? She croaked, each word a weight lifted from her trembling lips. At that moment, the shadows erupted violently, swirling in a tempestuous fashion, enveloping her, shrieking around her like an inferno. The choice loomed before her, a blinding light of uncertainty against the consuming void of despair. Just then, as she prepared to decide, a hand shot out, gripping her arm. The woman pulled her forward, but Emily yanked away, confronting the dark tendrils that recoiled. It felt as if the world itself trembled in anticipation of her next move, the dualities battling for supremacy. Your choice will echo through eternity. The shadows screamed, their voices merging into a spine-chilling crescendo. As Emily squared her shoulders, a realization pinched at her: every second spent dilly-dallying could cost her everything that mattered. And yet, fear snaked in. What if every option led her deeper into unraveling horrors? Clarity flashed through the chaos. The cabin reverberated with unsettling energy that promised pain and sacrifice. With resolve, she met the woman's gaze, the shadows clawing gently for her again. What lay ahead? Was it salvation or doom? Would she find her children, or would they spiral into the night? As the laughter crescendoed anew, Emily knew time was ticking. The magic of choice, frail yet powerful, was in her trembling hands. In that moment of truth, just as she took her first step, a flicker in the shadows caught her eye. Ghastly whispers erupted from the dark, a secret that had the power to shatter everything she thought she knew. What would she discover when she pierced through the veil? The question lingered, heavy as the shadows themselves. Would protection come with a fatal cost? Emily's heart pounded as the whispers grew louder, wrapping around her like a noose. The shadows stirred restlessly, clawing at her sanity. A sense of urgency pushed her forward. She had to choose to dive headfirst into the shimmering light or succumb to the grasping darkness. But something shifted within her. A pulse of fear surged, making it clearer than anything she had felt before. Her children needed her now more than ever. Summoning her remaining courage, she turned her back on the woman in white, focusing intently on the source of her children's cries. "Mommy!" They screamed again, their voices a raw mix of desperation and terror, each note cutting deep into her heart. With no hesitation, Emily dashed toward the door, defying the shadows that swarmed around her. The line of darkness writhed, hissing and snapping like serpents ready to strike. She felt it tugging at her clothing, weaving around her feet, whispering venomous promises of safety and strength if only she would turn around. But she wouldn't. She couldn't. Hold on. I'm coming. Emily shouted, her voice faltering but firm. Every breath choked on the weight of what lay ahead, yet her will ignited a fire in her chest. The door stood cracked open, revealing nothing but an expanding abyss. She flung herself through, the darkness clawing at her back as she veered toward the cries. Inside the cabin, the air thickened, a stench of decay clinging like a shroud. Glancing around frantically, she saw nothing but shadows melding with the walls. The cries grew louder, echoing her name, but the further she ventured, the more they distorted, twisting into gales of false laughter. "Where are you?" She screamed, each word uttered through gritted teeth as panic surged like a wild storm in her chest. The haunted echoes ricocheted through the empty space, and every shadow felt like a blade ready to plunge into her. Suddenly, she spotted a flicker of movement, a childhood drawing pinned haphazardly near the fireplace. It was her daughter's artwork, a shining beacon in the suffocating gloom, depicting a treehouse surrounded by smiling stick figures. Emily's breath hitched as a sense of familiarity washed over her. Gathering courage, she propelled herself forward, arms outstretched. As her fingertips brushed against the paper, it felt strangely warm. Just then, the air shifted, the shadows around her screeching in rage and despair. They surged toward her, hungry for her fear, for her uncertainty. "Leave me alone!" Emily screamed, panic rising. She clenched her teeth, drawing from the well of strength inside her. Focusing on the drawing, Emily felt an electric charge tingle through her, grounding her in the chaos. As darkness softened at the edges of her mind, she searched for the source of her children's voices. "Mom! Here!" They echoed, faint and fragile. "Stay together. I'm coming." She fought against the consuming tide, pushing through the wall of shadows. It surrounded her like a thick fog, each whisper growing more venomous, pulling her down. As she stumbled, a vision emerged, a glimpse of a darkened room down the hall. Pictures of her family lined the walls, their faces twisted and warped. The hallway stretched endlessly, shadows flickering like angry flames, the light stabbing painfully into her eyes. But her children. They needed her. The anger of the shadows intensified again, hissed curses echoing like thunder, but Emily grasped the drawing tighter. With newfound resolve, she launched herself toward the opening, where none of the shadows could reach. As she crossed the threshold, a howling wind erupted, accompanied by fierce laughter, an eruption of fury cascading down the walls. In the next moment, she faced a room filled with an unnatural glow, the air vibrating with energy. At its center stood a figure cloaked in dark. Emily's breath hitched again. The laughter, she realized, was not meant for her, it was directed at her children. "Behind you." A voice whispered darkly, beckoning her to turn. What awaited her there? A feeling of dread wrapped tightly around her throat as She hesitated, an instinctual fear tugging at the corners of her mind, almost daring her to dive deeper into the heart of the void. As she turned, the walls shifted like living entities, closing in on her, shadows transformed into grotesque faces that leered hungrily. Just as everything screamed inside her a bone-deep terror that felt insurmountable, she took a step forward, heart racing. What awaited in the darkness could just be the end or the key to saving her family. With a single breath, she plunged into the unknown. What awaited her on the other side of that veneer? Would the true nature of the darkness be revealed? Or would it consume her and everything she held dear? Emily spun around, heart hammering in her chest, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she faced the ominous darkness. The laughter from behind became an echo, slithering into her thoughts, taunting her resolve. The shadows encroached, clawing at her ankles, hungry. She drew in a sharp breath, the air thick with a chill that sunk deep into her bones. "Stay away!" she shouted, but her voice seemed tiny, swallowed whole by the malevolent force surrounding her. The dark figure at the center pulsated like a black hole, its very presence absorbing all hope, all light. "Come closer, Emily," it whispered, voice smooth yet piercing, slithering into her mind. "Your children beckon, dear mother. They want you and we want you too." The shadows danced around her, a whirlpool of dark that seemed to breathe. Panic clawed at her throat, tightening until she could barely swallow. Just then, a piercing shriek broke through the laughter. It wasn't just a shout, it was a cry of pure terror that reverberated through the air, so raw, so haunting, that it nearly brought her to her knees. "Mommy!" The voice shrieked again, filled with desperation. "Where are you?" Emily shrieked back, her voice barely recognizable. The shadows shifted, elongating and bending as if in response. She took a tentative step backward, her resolve cracking like ice beneath her. And then she saw them, little figures, small and frail, materializing through the haze. Her children, their faces distorted and wild with fear. They reached out, hands grasping for safety, their bodies flickering like flames caught in a tempest. "Help!" they cried, their voices melding with the ever-growing echo of the dark figure, whose laughter rolled over her like thunder. "No! Not like this!" Emily surged forward, desperate to break free from the paralyzing grip of the shadows. With each careful step, she felt the oppressive weight of darkness roll off her shoulders. She grasped the picture tight against her chest, letting the warmth spread through her fingertips, a lifeline in the chaos. "Look at what you've created," the figure cooed mockingly. "A mother's love, a fragile thread. Are you ready to unravel the truth?" The walls began to shift again, edges trembling like raw nerves, exposing glimpses of horrific scenes, her children laughing, then screaming, lost and found, in an endless hysterical loop. As she advanced, the air crackled with tension, every heartbeat resonating in time with the shadows around her. "You are well beyond negotiation, Emily. Join us." "No." She had to make them see her strength. "I'm not afraid of you." The moment those words left her lips, the shadows hissed, retreating slightly as if her defiance stung them. But the figure leaned closer, its presence swelling with insidious glee. "Oh, but you're wrong. You've already made the sacrifice. You've done it for them. The way is clear." With a flick of its wrist, the shadows lunged forward, grasping at her like claws of despair. The image of her children twisted as painful memories ripped through her mind. Each taunt, each moment of fear became a lamprey feeding on her resolve. Emily gritted her teeth, determination igniting her spirit. "I will fight for them." She surged forward, shoving the drawing at the dark mass, forcing her love into the air like a weapon. The shadows shrieked, the sound deafening, rattling her core. Light flared from the drawing, forcing the darkness back, but as the illumination flooded the room, her children let out a wail, a desperate sound that cut deeper than any blade. "Mommy, please!" They reached for her, tears streaming down their faces, and in that instant, Emily's heart shattered. Just then, the figure screamed, infuriated, and as it recoiled, the walls began to warp, bending and buckling as if the very cabin wished to escape. Emily felt the ground tremble beneath her feet, a low, menacing growl that vibrated in her bones. As everything around her spiraled into chaos, Emily lunged forward, clutching her children's hands, their tiny fingers slipping through her grasp. The drawing burned in her palm, pulsating like a heartbeat. At that moment, the shadows convulsed, forming a vortex pulling everything toward it, threatening to rip them apart. Together, she shouted, fighting against the pull, summoning every ounce of courage. We can break this. But the scream of despair echoed one final time, piercing through her hope. Suddenly, the light dimmed, a swirling dark tide crashing over them, and she felt a jolt of fear grip her as everything fell into silence. What had become of her children? Was she destined to lose them to the shadow forever, or was there a hidden power yet to be unlocked within her desperate heart? As betrayal tugged at her soul, she braced herself, knowing she was on the brink of something either terrifying or monumental. Emily felt the ethereal silence envelop her, stretching on like an endless chasm. The cabin shuddered as its shadows lingered, swirling like a tempest around her. Then, she felt a tremor beneath her feet, a pulse that echoed with the memories of laughter now replaced by her children's anguished cries. It was apparent, they were lost. But she knew she had to fight. Taking a deep breath, she felt the warmth of the drawing radiating through her fingers, a lifeline tethering her to hope. We will not be taken, she declared, her voice breaking through the chilling winds of despair that sought to drown her resolve. The shadows writhed at her proclamation, hissing in fury. With newfound courage, she turned toward the swirling darkness, the figure at its center pulsing with a sinister glow. You think your fear will bind us? I refuse to let you win. The figure laughed, a sound both haunting and hollow. But you've already lost, dear mother. This darkness craves what you value most. Suddenly, the shadows lunged at her, a voracious tide. Each tentacle grasped her with cold, clammy fingers, but Emily fought back, channeling every ounce of love for her children. I am their mother. I will not let you take me. She pulled the drawing close, and it ignited in a brilliant light, illuminating the darkness like a sliver of hope piercing through despair. As the beams sliced through the gloom, the cries of her children grew louder, encapsulated in the folds of light. Here! She shouted, extending her hands toward them. Feel my love. My hope. The moment filled with energy, the very air vibrated. The shadows recoiled, their screeches splitting the air around them. The drawing flared, pushing back against the darkness, illuminating the twisted faces hidden within. Emily. It was Joshua's voice, filled with fear yet edged with determination. We're here. We see you. Emily's heart surged as she felt their connection pull her further into the light. Don't let go. She yelled, feeling the warmth of their spirits mingle with hers. Everything and everyone that mattered surged forward, igniting under the light. Then it happened. A chasm opened wide beneath them, swirling with shadows and echoes of lost souls. The figure's grip weakened, its laughter faltering. You think you can banish me? It hissed, scrambling to maintain control. You're merely fueling the darkness. No, she roared defiantly. I choose love. I choose my family. With one final cry, emanating from the very core of her being, she thrust the drawing into the heart of the shadows. Bright light erupted from the connection, flooding the room. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in agony as the light broke their grasp. Emily was lifted, her feet no longer touched the ground as the warmth of love enveloped her. She spun, her heart brimming with hope, and reached for the echoing cries of her children. Suddenly, a shimmering doorway of light materialized, revealing her children, their eyes wide with fear but filled with deep hope. Mommy! They cried, and just like that, Emily was propelled toward them, hands stretching out in desperation. Together! She shouted over the clamor. As they grasped her fingers, she felt an overwhelming wave of joy clash with a lingering fear. But they were united, no longer separated by shadows. Now! Emily urged, pulling them through the light with all her strength. As they stepped through, the dark figure howled in rage, its form disintegrating into faint shadows, dissipating with each heartbeat of love radiating between Emily and her children. With one final push, they crossed into the shimmering light, and the darkness shattered behind them. Triumphant laughter echoed, fading into a tranquil silence. They found themselves outside on the cabin's porch, sunlight bathing them in warmth, the forest alive with birdsong. How did we escape?" Josh gasped, holding them close as the sense of safety washed over them. Emily smiled, heart swelling. "We fought for each other. We're free now." Together, they turned back to look at the cabin, a mere memory now, echoes of fear quickly fading. With the woods behind them, they began to walk away, hand in hand, their hearts light with hope regained, into the sunlit future that awaited beyond the trees. As they reached the end of the driveway, Emily felt a deep sense of calm settle within her. No darkness could hold them. No fear could tether them down. They had faced the abyss together and had emerged stronger on the other side. Now, if you've made it this far in the story, here's your chance to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories just like this one. Trust me, you don't want to miss a moment. And hey, smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Every thumbs up helps more people discover amazing tales like this, but don't just stop there, flood that comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What do you think will happen next? Let us talk about it. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. True fans know it's all about rallying around the stories we love. Let us spread the word together.